So I guess I don't know, just to kind of segue over, we were talking about this idea of writing rooms and people putting their influences on different projects. I feel that's a great segue into Too Many Cooks.
Oh, too many
Uh,
cooks. I want to correct you. I want to correct you because I don't want to get any flack from Casper. I was not a co-writer on it.
okay,
Um, so I was a creative consultant. But as I've said earlier, we all put our 100 cents into everything that's made there. So
yeah, yeah,
I did have quite a bit of input into it being made. But yeah, I don't want him to get his feathers ruffled because I know
yeah.
that guy. Chris, if you're listening, I know you. I got your number.
Yeah, and I don't know. For those of you who didn't listen to the interview I did with William, um, just to give you a rundown on Too Many Cooks, it starts off as like an '80s sitcom intro, like Full House, Different Strokes, or Family Matters, and it doesn't stop. The jingle just keeps going, and I mean, it seems like it goes for an eternity, and the visuals just kind of mutate, resembling every kind of like '80s cliche show you could think of, from
Mhm.
a cop show to GI Joe, Battlestar Galactica. I mean, it's all over the place. Once again, going into that realm of absurdity. But really, I mean, what I think it does is that I mean, it's like this like postmodern surrealistic dark comedy that uses nostalgia to create a feeling of unease and unease and what we would find like the
Yeah,
comforting aesthetic of a family comedy.
yeah, it pulls you in with it. There's a lot of I use the word trope, but I only use it because a trope, as you know, is something that is everyone uses. You see it 100 times, and the reason everyone uses it is because it's easily recognizable quickly. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I know what that means because I've seen that, and it's an easy way to get information out quickly for an audience if you want to move along or do whatever. I don't look badly upon tropes. Uh, so the intro is very tropey, very like this is a throwback to this, and it does play up on your like memory of those shows, and it eases you into a sense of it puts you up when weird stuff starts happening. It makes it more weird because you weren't ready for that because it seems like it's just a show that you've seen 100 times. And
Yeah.
so when the weird stuff starts happening, it even shines a bigger light on it, I think. So yeah, I think it's an amazing piece. It's just a piece of art. It's crazy. And I think Paul Painter edited that thing, and he did a fantastic job. He cut together like um, a huge version of it with actual shows
Hmm.
to kind of get the feel of it. And we went through hundreds of shows, um, but that thing was in production for a year, from start to finish. And the craziest thing was it just evolved. Like Chris didn't want to, or Casper didn't want to do it. His stage name is Casper. I'm supposed to say Casper in media things, and I always forget because that's not what his actual name is. But um, he didn't want to do it. He told the idea to Jim Fortier, who was Squidbillies show creator, and then Jim went and told it to Lazo with or Casper standing there. I'm so bad at this. Casper standing there, and Lazo was like, "Yeah, it sounds great. Go ahead and make it." But originally, it was just he wanted to do a 11-minute long intro. There was no twist or any weirdness in it.
Yeah.
And that sort of came out of us just sitting around and spitballing ideas for it for weeks and weeks until he sort of formulated what he and it was like a 3-day shoot. It was in edit for a year. The song took forever to craft and make, uh, and we were just as surprised as everybody else when we actually finished it because we were like, "This is never going to be finished." Um, and we were even more surprised when it went crazy like it did. I told Chris before he even did it. I told Casper before he even did it. I said, "This is going to be the coolest." I said, "You have to do this. It's going to be the coolest thing of all time, or it's going to be terrible. But either way, you have to do it because of those two factors." And
Yeah.
it turned out to be the coolest thing of all time. I was right. I was half right. So, so yeah, that thing is nuts. What do you have any questions about that thing? I can fill in all the blanks for you.
Well, I mean, I've always been curious about the creative process on that because, I mean, there's so many different interpretations, right, that you could have for that one. I mean, one interpretation is that Too Many Cooks is a struggle between like a creator and producers of a show. You know, there's so many different radical changes as the show morphs, and how it's kind of representative like the creative process and how it's changed from its original vision. Did you guys ever talk about anything along those lines in the creative process, or were
I
the
think,
ideas around that ever even discussed?
yeah, Paul Painter, the editor, and Casper. Paul's more. I would say Paul's more Adult Swim aesthetics than I am, because he's got a weirder sort of sensibility about him. It's more. He worked on 12 Ounce Mouse and Off the Air is his favorite show. So he's got that sort of strangeness to him. So it sort of fit along real nicely in Too Many Cooks. And I think Casper had a lot of very lofty ideas and themes that he was putting into it when he wrote it, I think, but he didn't talk about it a lot. And I think
Okay.
him and Paul are the only ones that sort of know the themes that he wanted to do. I haven't heard it yet about him sort of spilling the beans on some of it, because if you'll notice, there's when William's up, you can't read his name across the bottom, and it does say some things, but Paul and Casper are the only ones that know what it says and why it says what it says.
Hmm.
And he wouldn't tell me. And so I was like, okay, but I'm not a very curious guy. So I was like, okay, whatever. I don't know the overarching like themes, but I do feel like it is a skewing of that whole genre of filmmaking, and just the literal murdering of it, and doing away with it as it sort of moves along, I think as a theme of it. But yeah, I can't tell you 100% what his end game was as for what he was crafting with it, thematically speaking.
Right.
So get him on your show and talk to him about it. You must do that. So then I can know.
Man, if I can get him on the show, I'd love to sit down with him. We'll talk about Camus and absurdism for a while, I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah, he would love it. I'll pass you along to him and see if he'd do it. And we're all bored right now, so this is nice to have something to do.
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't know. There's like so many little details that like kind of subvert expectations. Like, you know, you're talking about like, you know, the name tag with William. Like one of the things that I always found interesting, even though it's like such a small touch, is that the entire time he's wearing this like worn out Cosby sweater. And, you know, as a kid growing up in the 80s, the Cosby sweater was a symbol of like the gentle fatherhood figure.
Yes.
Um, but you know, putting it on the killer and just having it be like kind of worn out and gross, it kind of, you know, shows the deterioration of that kind of archetype over the years, right? I mean, primarily, you know, in the years that followed, you know, with what we know about Cosby now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and what a lot of people, I mean, Roby Goren, I was talking to him, he worked with Cosby. Everybody knew Cosby wasn't a good guy. He was one of the biggest assholes to have to work with. Everybody
Oh,
knew it. It was, you know, kind of it was just kind of a thing people turned their back to. But you know, just kind of seeing that symbol subverted in pop culture. I mean, it really just gets you at like this kind of like unconscious level, right? You know,
yeah,
that
yeah,
it just kind of gets in your head and it sticks there for a while.
yeah. It's yeah, definitely. I don't know if that was intentional, but it may have been. It seemed very prophetic, though, at the very least.
Yeah.
Maybe Casper's a prophet. I'm not saying he is, or I'm not saying he's not, but there's a good chance he might be. Um, that was that that whole thing was so crazy to be sort of a part of, because we sort of worked on it when we weren't doing other Your Pretty Face. So we would Your Pretty Face and then take a little bit of time here to work on it here and then this and that. and when it was finished, it was kind of like some of us had kind of almost forgot that it was around, you know. So one of those things that it was a surprise that it was done. It's like, oh, it's finished. Um, and you know, we went back and forth on that thing. So like the cut and like, should we do this here? There's a scene where you see the Falcon a couple times, like 3 times. It cuts to this Falcon looking around. I hated that, and I wanted them to take it out. And the only reason it was even in there was because Paul's rig was glitching, and it kept cutting back to that on accident.
Really?
They liked it, so they were like, "Let's put it in for real." So that shows, you know, don't take my advice on a lot of things, but yeah, that thing was a lot of. I would say too many cooks made that thing, because there was a lot of people whose input was going into it. And massaging it to what it was. But yeah, we were all dumbstruck when it went nuts like the way it did. It was all like, it was numbing to say the least when that was, because none of us are used to that kind of attention on anything. So it was great to finally have something that cut through like it, and deservingly so. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of art, and that song will never leave your brain once it gets in there.
No, not even hearing it right now and just thinking about it. I know it's going to be stuck in my head for another week at least. And it's always going to creep up on you when you're not expecting it.
Exactly.
You're taking a shit, and then it's just like, oh, I'm cooking something in here.
Yeah. Anytime anyone says that phrase, talking about anything, that's the first thing that pops into my head. Like we have subverted a turn of phrase that was commonly used and just ruined it, I think, for a whole generation of people. Or enhanced it. I don't know. Ruined or enhanced. One of those two. I'll let you pick.
I mean, I like to think enhance, because like it kind of deconstructs, that phrase, too many cooks in the kitchen is going to ruin the broth. But you know what? I feel like another interpretation is that the video, just with that phrase attached to it, gives a lot of credence to the idea or the interpretation of the stalling of creativity in pop culture. That the killer, represents the audience of these sitcoms no longer willing to accept these mediocre forms of entertainment. And I mean, you look at the the massive shift that you've had from like that traditional sitcom format, in like the late 90s. And I mean, now with streaming services where, companies are just making these long, thought out, 12-hour long episode shows. I mean, the entire dynamic of what a TV show is has been completely flipped on its head, almost 180.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's so much good stuff out there, but I feel like there's a lot of bad stuff too, and I feel like it's stemming from what can we do that's weird and different that no one's done before, which I think is great. I think that pushes a lot of boundaries and forces you to sort of think differently and create new things. But there's just, it makes it hard as a writer too, because everyone wants, when something's successful, everyone wants something that's just like that. And you could write something that's just like that and work on it and then pitch it, and they're like, no, we want, it's not this, but like this. And it's that no one really knows what they want until they see it, and even then they're not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the Netflix stuff. I mean, the thing about the Netflix shows is they're not from nowhere. They're based on books and on, it's just, they're why wouldn't you take a popular book and turn it into something? I feel like people are looking at Netflix as like, wow, they're coming up with these original shows, and they're also different and weird, and they're great. And I'm like, well, they're based on books, and they've been there for a while, and they just decided to take this and to get a good director attached to it and make something cool. I don't know where I'm going with that.